I hope we're all suitably refreshed. I'm going to introduce Chris in a moment. Just before I was rudely interrupted by the fire alarm, I was going to talk a little bit about Ben's presentation and thank Ben for coming along and doing that for us. Really interesting insights to hear there. It was good to see him talk about the phase one side of OPP's project. Looking at doing some of the personalisation, and he referenced back to the maturity model that Sitecore developed. We'll dive into that in a bit more detail in a moment. Chris is somewhat of an expert on that. But it is a tool that's been developed by Sitecore and has been passed to all partners, as all of your partners will have received this, and they'll be upskilled and capable of working through it in order to deliver DMS side projects. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Chris, who's going to head through that into a bit more detail.
Perfect. Can everyone hear me okay? Sounds like it's working. Brilliant. So my name is Chris Gamblen. I'm the Head of Business Optimisation Services in the UK. We are a relatively new part of the UK office, formed January this year, mainly because, as Ben alluded to earlier on, when we first started branching into a Sitecore, the marketing side of the Sitecore platform, we did a very good job at creating a technically very sound and solid product. But we suddenly realised, of course, that we need to start talking to the marketers and actually educating and helping partners and indeed customers to better understand what it is we're trying to do, and of course roll out and plan and strategize appropriately using the technology that we put together. So that's why, as Ben was saying, back in 2011, when we launched the customer engagement platform, we took a conscious decision to really put a lot of effort into developing the SBOSS services, or the business optimization services, to be able to provide everyone with tools, guidance, workshops, papers, white papers, webinars, you name it, the whole shebang, to allow you guys to better understand the process and allow you guys to better exploit the Sitecore platform that, of course, you've all invested in. And of course, this becomes much more prevalent because as time goes on, we are very much in the age of the customer. We're in a situation, of course, where customers are very much in charge of how they consume our digital assets, how they navigate through our website, what it is they're trying to do, and of course, how best to receive it all, essentially. So we need to be very conscious and very aware that it is the customer that's driving this. And if we look back over time, well, does this one go back to the 1900s, apparently, quite an old one. But of course, you can start to see the evolution of what customers have gone through to get to where they are right now. And of course, what's important is to understand from a business perspective that we need to be able to understand and react to this evolution of our customers so that we can really provide lifelong customers and lifelong experiences to our customers by, of course, better understanding who they are, what they're looking to do, and how they're looking to do it. And of course, again, ensuring that we have a suitable platform, the Sitecore platform, that allows us to facilitate all these different features. So again, just a very quick explanation of what the Sitecore customer engagement platform is. I will do my best to avoid using the various acronyms that we've got. So the customer engagement platform is really two core components. There is, of course, the web content management part of what the Sitecore platform is. That's your workflows, your versionings, all that fun stuff. Then, of course, there's the digital marketing system. And again, this is our version number 2. The first version was the online marketing suite. Again, technically, a very good product. From a usability perspective, lacking in a lot of areas. And of course, DMS is then geared towards addressing all of those concerns, fixing those issues, and ensuring that you guys can ultimately use this platform. But again, because we do start now talking about the DMS, and as I'm sure you all gathered from Ben's presentation earlier on, the DMS is a beast. There's no denying that. There's an awful lot of functionality in there. Personalization, both behavioral, rules-based, and of course in the rules-based setup, there's a whole range of different rules that we can use to exploit and leverage for that. We have our A/B testing, our multivariate testing, we have our email tools, our testing tools and the email tools. We've got, just goes on, the list goes on. And of course, absolutely, there's the ability for us to go in very quickly and earn some quick wins on a Sitecore solution. So things like rules-based personalization, for example. It's really simple for us to go in there, even if you're not using Sitecore for analytics, go into your Google Analytics reports. What are your top 10 keywords? Brilliant. Let's go on the home page of our website, select one component, and set up some very simple rules-based personalization so we can start to target content appropriately. And again, things like this, these low-hanging fruits, these quick wins, allow us to better exploit the platform. But again, as I'm sure you all picked up from Ben's presentation, when you really want to exploit the customer engagement platform, and in particular all the DMS functionality, you have to plan, you have to strategize, you have to have the right people in the room. Without that, and I've seen this unfortunately firsthand, you end up with a solution that tries to do everything and nothing. And that's the problem. We need to be able to better understand our own internal stakeholders, our reasons for being, why does the website exist, and of course understand more about the customers, what is it they're trying to achieve and so on the website, and bring all that intelligence together so that we can then start to put together the strategy. Very quick slide here in terms of the different bits of functionality that we've got. I'll refer back to this a bit later on, and you can not really see it, but there are little arrows that kind of go around this, simply to indicate that we see this as a general flow of how customers can very quickly work their way, or at least visualize how to adopt the customer engagement platform and the various bits of functionality. And the reason we'll come back to this later on is it does map itself very nicely and very neatly onto one of the main topics for today, which of course is the digital, or rather customer experience maturity model. Before I do jump into that though, just want to very quickly just extend upon what Phil was saying, is that the Sitecore Business Optimization Services team is here primarily to support partners. So we do educate partners, we provide all of our resources and materials to partners, but of course at the same time we look for opportunities with partners where we can work directly with people such as yourselves, where we can actually come in, sit down, run the workshops, run the strategies, and as you can see here we've developed a whole model that does really sit around your general process of a site build. So we have workshops and we have best practice guides that sit in this kind of analysis phase of your projects. So we can start to look at this analysing of your digital maturity, which of course we'll see a bit more detail in just a second. We have the scoping workshop, which again sets the vision for what the platform can achieve, and again trying to see and understand where it is that you guys actually have the kind of synergies. Once you're in the design phase, again, many more workshops that again Ben was alluding to earlier on, that allow us to start looking at things like personalization. It's not just a case of saying, yes, I want to personalize. It's, okay, what are these segments? What is it we're trying to achieve? How do we best understand and collate this information that is out there so that we can put it into a meaningful strategy kind of going forwards? Then, of course, assessment workshops to ensure that everything's being built correctly. And, of course, lastly, ensuring that you guys are comfortable and knowledgeable in utilizing the platform and essentially taking this on board yourselves. There's no denying, and I think Ben did mention earlier on, there's no denying that what with the complexity of the product and the DMS, and again, the many various routes that we can go down, you do need to have the right people in place, the right ears of the people, so that you can really get the buy-in from the different segments. I was up at a particular sporting client, shan't mention any names, who have 4 different divisions that kind of have something to do with the website. And they're all fighting for that homepage position, they're all fighting for who's got that top spot and so on. So when I went up there and started talking about the process here, they very quickly realized that they may well have all the money in the world and all the best people in the world, but until they start talking to each other and aligning these objectives, these strategic objectives, marketing objectives and all that fun stuff, they're never going to get this platform to really deliver what it can deliver. So that's now forced them to go back and look into the communication internally so that everyone is on the same page of the platform. So let's look into a bit more detail now around the actual customer engagement, customer experience maturity model. So has anyone seen the first version of this? It was out 12 or so months ago. A few nods, brilliant. Has anyone seen the new one? We have run a few webinars on this one, but not promoted it too much. No? Okay, brilliant, good. That makes my life much more interesting then. To explain it to you. So again, Ben stole a bit of my thunder by showing the slide earlier on. This is our maturity model. It's actually not. There's 5 of them, 6 of them, 5 of them. There's a whole bunch. But this is the easy one that everyone can consume. And fundamentally, we can break it down into 3 what we call macro phases. Your attraction phase, your conversion phase, and your advocacy phase. And of course, what we're talking about here, what we're referencing here is yourselves as clients. Where do you guys sit in this chart? One of the resources I'll talk about a bit later on is a self-assessment that you guys can take. There's a link for it as well in the slides. You can take this. And the reason we've done this online tool is to actually kind of not only give you guys the information and some guidance on what this means, but also allows us to better understand where the industry sits. Where is your typical customer in this process? So just a very quick show of hands. How many of you guys think you're kind of up in the top half of this in terms of the way you're engaging with your prospects, the technologies you're using? Show of hands, anyone? What about down this end? Show of hands, anyone? And that's what we're kind of finding. A lot of, if not almost all, of our respondents are sitting very much in this attraction phase of our maturity model. Starting at the very basics here, the initiate phase, very simple step. You have a website, it's a brochure website. You have analytics, it's on, but you're just kind of looking at Google every now and then and going, well, that's going up, that's a good thing, all right, brilliant. You're just not really leveraging what the platform can do. It's just there. Okay, fine. Let's move up to the attraction phase then. You're radiating. Your focus is, of course, you've got this content, and Anthony mentioned it before, show of hands and so on. How many of you are using your mobile channels? How many of you are taking the content that you've got and actually pushing it out to people? That's where our radiation phase starts to come in. You are trying to communicate your message out there. You're taking a much more proactive stance on the content and getting your messaging out there. And of course, we start to introduce the social networks as well. So again, Anthony referred to the social connected module. There's a lot more work as well that's going on to that. And as well, those of you who've kind of kept an eye on the Sitecore news, about 8 months ago, I think it was, we bought some shares in an organisation called Comfo, who are a big Facebook integration special partner people. I've had the luck of seeing an internal build of what we can do with that, and I can't, unfortunately, reveal the details. Suffice to say, it's spooky, because we know exactly who you are, where you've landed, which means that from a Sitecore page, without even logging into it or ever having visited a Sitecore page, all of a sudden, the Sitecore site can come up and say, welcome back, John, welcome back, Chris, because it's pulling on all this Comfo detail around your social. Of course, just because we can doesn't mean we should, but it was an example of what we can do with the technology. But again, that's the initial stages of our radiation. We are just simply, again, pushing messaging out into the social space. We're not really doing too much with it, but it is kind of there. The aligning phase is where things start to get a bit interesting. And again, this is where we are, so most of our customers and the people that fill out the responses are sitting down in these two states. Not so many are up here. This is where businesses are starting to take a bit more of a strategic look at their solution and their web presence, and indeed their entire digital presence. And they're starting to say, okay, well, we've got objectives, we've got a reason for being here. This website needs to do stuff, and we have these objectives. How do we start mapping these objectives to what the website can do? This is where we start to kind of introduce this notion of the digital goals. By understanding and tagging and profiling all these kind of fun things, we can really start to push the technology further so that what we're doing is moving away from your, obviously, standard kind of brochureware website to one that's a lot more responsive. We're starting to understand and listen a lot more to what you're, as a customer, of course, are doing on the website. That's our attraction phase. We're just trying to get visitors here. I've heard a figure being bandied around that a lot of customers will spend around 98% of budgets on attracting visitors, and only 2% of that budget, for the budgets, in actually taking those visitors that have come to their website and converting them. It's all well and good that we can spend £10,000 and bring in 1 million visitors to our website, but who cares if all those visitors are doing is looking and bouncing? We need to have a platform that can take that influx of visitors and respond to them in a meaningful and timely fashion. And that's, of course, where we start to look at the optimization and the nurturing side of things. So on the conversion phase, what we're starting to talk about here is the ability to say, right, well, we've got our initiatives, and we're going to start to use a lot more of these engagement values, and we'll come on to that a bit later on, but again, Ben did mention it earlier on. And we're going to start to take our analytics from what was just quantity-based into a qualitative-based measurement. We're now starting to better understand that, yes, I did spend £10,000, yes, I did get 1 million visitors on the website, but look at this level of engagement. People are actually engaging with me. They're signing up, they're downloading brochures, white papers, you name the whole shebang. The point is that we are now able to understand better what people are doing rather than just the pages they're visiting. And of course, we start to leverage even more of the functionality, so personalization and testing comes into play here. Personalization, again, could be something as simple as responding to keywords. Search keywords. It could be managing campaigns, for example. So if we've got AdWords, for example, we can attach campaign links. Anthony referenced the APS, the Adaptive Print Studio module. That allows us to actually create QR codes in InDesign that are automatically linked and tagged to these campaign codes inside the Sitecore platform. So all of a sudden, what we've now got is the ability for you guys to take a piece of paper, send it out, stick it in stores, whatever you want to do, with a QR code, and you can then start to understand when people are scanning these things and how effective was the spending of that £5,000 to create all those different brochures in actually bringing traffic back to the website. So we're really starting to bring on board, as we're getting up here, a bit more of this measurement metrics in all of our marketing spend, because now what we're starting to do is start to embrace all the different channels that we've got. And by underpinning all of these different channels that we've got with this engagement value score, we have the serious ability to start applying a constant metric to all of them. So we really can now, from a marketing perspective, have this consistent view of our customers, have this consistent measurement of our customers, and again, really truly understand how the different channels are performing, and of course, compare and contrast. If we're starting to find that, customers just simply aren't engaging with us on the social channels, but they really, really, really are engaging with us through TV, for example, does it make not sense to invest a bit more time and effort on the TV channel, for example? So again, all these kind of things we can start to feed out of the fact that we are starting to move away from your static brochure stuff, much more dynamic, much better understanding of what customers are doing. Once we're moving up to the nurture stage, then we're starting to look at building these relationships. And this is where we start to bring on board this engagement automation. And again, something that Ben mentioned earlier on. It's not a feature that many customers are using, but those that are doing a fantastic job with it. The most obvious use of this engagement automation, i.e. building a process that happens without us even having to be there. That can include things like welcome emails, welcome flows. Various customers are using them, for example, when you're requesting brochures, that not only does the brochure get emailed out as a part of this flow, but we can then measure, okay, those people that requested a brochure, this is where they are, okay, this is how many then clicked through back to the website and came back within 24 hours. These are the ones that then from there engaged even further. So we can really start to build out this flow. And as this flow proceeds, we can get the system to trigger things. Further emails, further personalization. We could customize it and go all out and start plugging this stuff into CRMs and start using CRM data to influence how customers are being treated on the website. So it really does start to get quite interesting. But one of the biggest uses of the engagement automation is a pharmaceutical company who are running Sitecore for a quit smoking campaign. And they've got this entire engagement. It could last 4 weeks, it could last 10 years, depending on how dedicated this person is at quitting smoking. But the point is that at every single step, there is the measurement. Has the client responded to this email? Okay, yeah, we know that email was targeted towards customers in this branch of this quitting campaign. Okay, fine. They've responded. Have they clicked that link? Yes, okay, fine. And we can manage this whole process, or rather, they manage this whole process by simply using engagement automation. And at any time, they can simply pop open the engagement automation monitor tool and actually understand and see where people are in this process. So the scope of where you can start to take the automation really does build upon this whole idea of nurturing visitors. If we can understand what they're doing, because of course we're leveraging the personalization, we're understanding the assets they're being consumed from here, we can really start to deliver them timely content and timely messaging. So the engagement phase, really what underpins the engagement phase here is this idea of a single view of the customer. Quick question, how many of you guys are doing both online and offline in your kind of marketing efforts and so on? Okay, so a fair chunk of you actually. Brilliant. So how many of you have actually got the ability to have this single customer view, to understand how people are working in that offline space along with the online space? CRMs, anyone? Yeah, a few CRM stuff. Okay, this is of course where we start saying, well, you need to have this marketing pot, you need to have this single customer database. And we're not saying Sitecore is the be-all and end-all, it's not. It can be used for it, of course. But when you start to plug in things like CRMs, where you really, truly have a single view of the customer, all those telephone calls, all those emails, all those things being saved in the real world, we can then start tapping into from the Sitecore world. And we can start extracting this information and start saying, yeah, well, we know from a sales perspective that you did receive 4 of our webinar emails, but on no occasion did you actually fill out that request and attend the webinar. So do you know what? We're going to use the automation plan to change it around and say, do you know what? They haven't responded to these 5 webinar requests. Let's now offer them a white paper. It's less engaging, less effort on their part. Maybe we can get that message pushed through that way. And again, all this stuff we can pull through and feed through from the CRM. And of course, as well, from the email perspective, Anthony mentioned the email campaign manager module. We can, of course, use that here too and start to, again, use this single view of the customer to start pulling data out of that CRM and use that to drive the engagement on the website. Again, filter through and better understand how people are actually consuming these assets, because that's, of course, the important bit. How are people reacting and using the assets that we give? Then, of course, we have the lovely lifetime customers, which is the ultimate goal. This is where, without even doing anything, as a business, we've got business logic in place where we are anticipating what this person's going to do next. We have systems set up where we're sending out distributed emails that are just about phrased in the right tone of voice, in the right context for what this person's about to do next. And again, the ultimate goal being that we can nurture that and we can bring it forward and we can give them exactly what they require and deliver them this entirely integrated story without them really ever knowing about it. It's all transparent. They wouldn't even have a clue of what's going behind the scenes. They just would see a solution that's understanding them and delivering the correct content. So really, really powerful stuff, the maturity model. The fundamentals as to why this stuff all exists, though, of course, is down to understanding where you guys are. So again, I'll come on to it a bit later on, but we have an assessment tool that allows you to answer a few questions that says, yep, do you know what? This is where you are. The minute we know where you are, and of course where you may want to get to on this chart, we can start to develop and plan an appropriate strategy for you to get there. And of course, as we start to look at the maturity model, we can start to expand upon it. So these versions, again, are all available to partners and so on. But we have the ability now to look at a more advanced view. So the advanced view maturity model now just starts to break things out. We have objectives for these things. We have KPIs for these things. We have focus areas for these things. And we can then start to look at how these things evolve over time to the point that you can obviously see it's a very, very intricate model here. And again, just to hark back to what Ben was saying, this is not something that you should take lightly. This is something that does need to be planned. Don't just jump in and think, yeah, I can be a lifetime customer just by turning this stuff on. You can't. You need to plan this stuff appropriately and carefully by, again, looking at these different focus areas, seeing where your strengths are as well internally as a business. You may not have the staff that are capable of managing and monitoring this stuff. And that's why, in the slide after next, I've got some descriptions. So we carry on going up. So we talk more advanced view, and by all means, of course, contact us afterwards, have a chat with me afterwards. We can go through this in more detail if you require. But as we start to kind of layer up this maturity model, we start to look at different elements that make up this whole platform. So this one now, we're looking at the actual functionality. What are the tools that we've got that we can actually start to exploit to get us to where we're going? And of course, you can start to see that when we start right down here, it's the real basic stuff, just as we said before. And of course, the more and more to the right you go, the more advanced the technology is that's being used to reach and allow us to reach the kind of lifetime customers. So again, you need to have this understanding that there is a path going forwards, and unless you have some of these elements in place, you need to maybe start looking at getting them in place if what you're really trying to do is push the Sitecore platform as far as possible so that you can attain this single view of the customer and lifetime customers. And of course, we can't forget that there are, some of you in the room, I'm sure, global industries, global businesses, who are working in different markets. And you can't just take what we do here in the UK and throw it out to the Middle East or throw it out into Asia. It's just not going to work because market demands are different. So when we start to look at this kind of stuff, we start to break it down into, for example, the different markets that may exist and start to look at the functionality that we can start to exploit as a result of this. So when we start to look at, for example, the emerging markets, they're not that advanced to go up this way. Of course, some of them will respond. There's no denying that. There's no point not trying. But you need to be aware that there is this kind of stacked view of what we're seeing here. So when we start to look at the emerging markets, there are certain things that we can definitely exploit, and it's really quick and really easy for us to do. New markets, of course, we can start to layer things up. And of course, then the full primary markets, we can start to exploit everything. So again, you need to clearly understand who it is that you're trying to target and go forwards with this stuff. Because again, going all out with all this fancy stuff in an emerging market probably won't get you the returns that you would expect it to get. So just be aware of that. Again, expanding even further on the functionality, a slide here just to show you that things evolve. The functionality evolves. So Anthony mentioned it earlier on when he was talking about the mobile detection side of things. Responsive, adaptive, God knows how many words there are for these things. The point is that things do evolve. So when we start to look at the very baseline here, the initiate phase, design, one size fits all. There is no responsive, there is no adaptive, there is nothing. Okay, fine. But as things start to evolve, we go into our responsive phase and we go into our device aware phase. So again, we need to be aware of each of these lines is not just a single point of entry and that is it and that's the answer and no more. No, the whole solution does need to evolve. So again, you need to plan and strategize for that because of course if we are just going to go ahead and just say, yep, that's all we're going to do, and we're going to leave that there right up until we get to the lifetime customers, you're going to find there's an awful lot of work for you to get your solution out of that one-size-fits-all into a state that really can personalize, trigger, all that fun stuff that we've been talking about so far. So again, be aware of this stuff. And again, look at social. Social, really simple. Let's just share content. Let's just stick some like buttons. Let's just do some really basic stuff. Fine, everyone can do that, but JavaScript, no problems. All right, but what if we start listening to people? What if we start having a facility in the platform that allows us to listen to what people are saying, sentiment analysis, all those kind of fun things? Is there a way we can build that into the platform? Is there a way we can start to use that to better tweak and tailor the experiences we're delivering to our customers? All right. One step further, The engagement phase. Well, let's proactively start talking to our customers on social channels. Again, Anthony mentioned that we've got this social connected that allows us to tap into, in particular, Facebook, and we can, again, depending on how you configure it, have access to their data and whatnot. That's brilliant. First of all, should we be doing that? Maybe, maybe not. But if we are doing it, well, we've suddenly got the access to talk to that person in and on a one-to-one basis. So again, we really need to understand what is it we're trying to get out of this social stuff. And for some of you guys, social may not be an important part of it at all. Again, it's all just about understanding and reacting to this stuff in a contextual way. And that's, of course, why we educate our partners, we've educated ourselves as well internally, to be able to say that it's not just a case of here's a design, off you go. No, it's a case of working with you guys to understand and, again, importantly, build this strategy that goes out over time so that we really can ensure that you guys are accommodated throughout your process. Talking of that, I did mention earlier as well, this particular diagram here is now breaking it down into typical user roles. So within your organizations, again, as the complexity grows with your DMS solution and as you're getting closer to this one-to-one solution, you need to bite the bullet that chances are that one person you got in marketing isn't going to be able to handle all this stuff. Don't be wrong, there are some fantastic people out there, maybe they will be able to do this. But as we're seeing with larger and larger organizations, you're getting a varied range of roles of people that are coming through. And of course, because of that, you need to make sure that everyone's on the same page. So again, casting it back to that example when I went to go and see that particular sporting organization, they have all these people in these 4 different silos, but they're not communicating. That's just silly, right? So get them talking, get these guys understanding, in particular, these data analysts. Behind the scenes of what the Sitecore platform's doing, we are collecting a whole bunch of data. And as we move into Sitecore 7, and Anthony alluded to it as well, the Andy's project, we will see more and more data being generated. Because ultimately, by having the data, you guys can start to make the business decisions based on your digital objectives, strategic, all these fun things that go around the sides. So, but again, by having this data here, we do need to have these data analysts because the amount of data that we can, the amount of intelligence we can pull out of data is immense. How many of you have heard the story about, was it Target in the US and the promotion that went out to a young girl? Yeah. For those of you that haven't, Target have got this obviously huge database, all this buying cycle information, and this little girl, 14, 13 years old, whatever she was, gets a leaflet through the door offering her discounts on nappies. So the father sees this and just goes ballistic. Calls up Target, what on earth are you doing? How dare you sell this stuff? 2 weeks later, the girl goes for a pregnancy test, she was pregnant. Target knew that because of her buying habits in store. So the data's there, the knowledge is there. Scary stuff, right? So not suggesting we go down that creepy route on the Sitecore platforms, but you know, the data is there. And if we have the smart data analysts, that's where things start to get interesting because that's where we start to really pull out this intelligence that is just sitting there waiting for us to exploit. So I mentioned it before. We do have this Excel version of the calculator for your digital maturity. It's a great tool. We don't normally hand this out directly to you guys. We prefer to sit down with you guys and, of course, more importantly, with your partners too, to run through this. These things are great to get a discussion going because, of course, your head of marketing will say, well, of course we're doing all this fun stuff. Everyone else will be like, yeah, are you sure we are? So, again, it's about understanding and having a discussion around these points because there's no one right answer. It's a case of where do we think we sit and, again, developing a strategy that way. You can try it for yourselves. I should have really shortened that for you guys, it's a bit annoying. But if you go to the Sitecore website, if you hover over the resources button here, I think it's the last option, if memory serves, is the customer experience, this thing, basically. It's a much more simplified version, it's just 10 questions. Again, you select your industry and some other things, and it'll come out with, I didn't get a screenshot, it'll come out with where you sit on this chart and some suggestions as to what you could do, and importantly, gives you a little tick box to allow you to have this emailed to you. I have a little ebook, it's not that big, 30, 40 pages, whatever, but again it goes into the detail of what is the maturity model, why is it important, if you're in this stage, what should you be considering to kind of go up the process and all that kind of fun stuff. So definitely recommend you do that. You may get pestered by a sales guy, but it's a really good book and I do recommend you get hold of that one to review. And not sales guys, of course, these guys, because they'll pester you. So, bring it right back to the beginning. You saw this slide, but of course we did not see these arrows on the side. So just to bring it right back round, we have all this different Sitecore functionality, and what we see of this functionality is that you can apply this functionality to the different macro stages that exist in the maturity model. And that's the important bit. Again, that's not to say that to get down here, you need to have done all this stuff. You don't at all. But to really maximize that does help for you to have done this. And again, that's why it's always good to understand where you are, what it is you want to do, how you want to do it, because then we can come up with a plan as to best manage that. Okay, so how am I doing on time? No idea. We'll carry on. So digital goals. So again, something that Ben alluded to several times during his presentation. How many of you have seen this slide? Sorry, I have to do it again. This slide really just introduces to you the concept of these digital goals, engagement value scores, and of course how they're all tabulated together. So in this oddly football-shaped thing, every little dot you see here is a page, an item in the Sitecore thing. What we have here are 3 specific goals that have been created. These goals have been tagged with scores. As you can see, there are my pages tagged with those goals. So all we're simply saying is Mr. Visitor comes along here, bounces around some pages and disappears. Okay. As far as we're concerned, that's a bounce, because they've not engaged with us through the value scores here. So again, this comes back to this idea of quantity versus quality. From our perspective, that's a bounce because the quality of that lead was a 0 quality score. Of course, yes, we can still grab the whole standard bounce metrics, but for us, that's important. But as we start to go through, organic search here, for example, start to touch some pages, and this visitor starts to accumulate some points. And it's as simple as that. We have the ability in the platform to look at these different channels because, again, it's a single platform managing all of these different channels, and we start to understand how visitors are navigating through our assets, what is it they're consuming, and importantly, if they're consuming, when they're consuming, are these goals tagged with any of these engagement value scores? Because it goes without saying, the more the value is here, the more important that action is to us as a business. So as we start to click on through, more and more things come through. It's a webinar one. This person's going to go and do, 75 points there. The next one that comes through, there we go. It's the same channel, but of course earning more points. So what we're starting to say is, at the outset, whilst initially we thought maybe the email white paper was going to be the most valuable source for us, we actually saw here more people came through for the webinars, more people generated engagement value scores. So actually this one's better performing in terms of a channel or a campaign source. Now, what's really nice is behind all of the the goal development is a really fun workshop. It's a half-day workshop. You get tons of post-it notes. You scribble stuff. You stick it on the wall. We've even been taught in Sitecore that there is a very special way to pull off these particular post-it notes to ensure they don't curl. And fear not, we will of course impart that knowledge onto you guys too. But the point is that it's a really dynamic event, and it's also kept anonymous. Because as Ben was alluding to, you need to have the right people in the room. You need to have the marketing guys, the business guys, everyone in the room. But is Mr. Little Marketing Person really going to go up against and question the big marketing boss? Probably not. So by keeping it anonymous, everyone can just stick ideas down. No one cares, and they just get stuck up. They get filtered into categories. These categories, you can't quite see all that well, but are just little icons. That's a tree, that's a triangle, and so on. So it's all kept as anonymous as possible. Because what you start to do is start to take all these ideas as to what are these potential goals on the website, how do they align themselves, and you start to categorize them, all the ones that are similar. That's similar, they're similar, they're similar. And by the end of it, what you end up with is, go back one more, is a whole bunch of these red tags, which you eventually then translate into what were all those goals in that branch, what were they related to? Instant demonstrations, whatever it needs to be. Okay, fine. We have those. We have a pyramid now, and we take our goals and we stick them on a pyramid in order of importance. So how important is, for example, our get a quote versus, for example, our, can't even read that one, something about a friend. The point is we're now ranking these things in order. And off the back of that, we can then start to, in a much nicer diagram here, visualize what are the goals in our website. These are the ones taken straight off Sitecore.net. If you go to our website, if you do these actions, you earn these points. We, again, because of the CRM integration, have all this stuff fed back into our CRM. So we know instantly, I can pull up any one of your contact details, and if you've downloaded a white paper or a webinar, I can pull up your details, I can see what you last did, the assets you last consumed, the PDFs you last consumed, all that fun stuff. So it really does become a powerful tool from a sales perspective, but also from an intelligence perspective. If we launch a new asset and it's just not getting the buy-in, not getting the consumption rates that we were expecting, we can go back and look at what were user journeys through this. And as Anthony was referring to earlier on, the visual path analyzer will do a great job at visualizing all that stuff for us. So once we've done all these cool things, we then have the ability to say, right, well, our standard metrics, our Google metrics, our quantity-based metrics will give us these lines. What I'm saying to you is that our quality-based metrics, with all these engagement value scores behind the scenes, will allow us to do that. So this chart, to me, is now saying, yeah, fine, my customer, not retention, my acquisition, my visitor acquisition was definitely going up, but actually the engagement levels of those visitors peaked and is now actually just kind of plateaued. So there's something going wrong here. People aren't engaging with me in the same way that I thought they were. So let's look back, what happened in August, go through our marketing campaigns, filter it all out, and again start to look and work to optimize. Of course, campaigns apply too, so we can create these campaign elements inside Sitecore. We can just take this little campaign ID and just stick it on the end of any URL we want. So AdWords, banner adverts, again, QR codes, embeddable, whatever. The point is, we can start to look at the analytics and say, well, yeah, historically, absolutely growing strong. That was a fantastic campaign. It brought me in nearly 10,000 visitors. Yeah, hang on a second. Those visitors weren't really doing all that much. We actually found that the golden ground ones were doing much more engagement. They were better involved with what we were trying to do here. Again, I won't dwell too much on this one, but you get the same idea. Which channels are most effective? Again, the Sitecore platform can filter out the different channels we've got. You can create your own channels. You can do all sorts of great things. The point is, you can then start to understand exactly how and where your best engagement is coming from. There's of course a tool in the platform, quite a flexible tool. Lots of insights you can get into this one. Great for multi-site as well, so you can start to look at multi-site reports as well and filter things out. But for me, what gets really interesting is this engagement intelligence analyzer. This is coming out, I think it's this month, if memory serves, or next month, certainly imminently anyways. And this is really where a web analyst just goes nuts. This is a tool that's just it's a BI tool, fundamentally, business intelligence tool. You can plug in all sorts of metrics and dimensions and stuff to start popping out charts and reports that are specific to what that web analyst is looking to get. And you can start to do some really smart filtering. So here, for example, if I were to click on paid, what will happen is that Sitecore will then go away and filter this whole report to say, only show me those visits that resulted as a part of that paid campaign. So I can now start looking over here and saying, right, of the paid campaigns, which ones responded most effectively? I can start to also leverage things like the behavioral stuff. I know I haven't spoken much about behavioral personalization, but Ben did mention it. When we start to look at patterns and personas and profiles, we have the ability also within here to have a list of all these patterns and personas. So I can then start clicking and saying, of those web analysts, or of those strategic guys, or of those developers that, again, exhibited behaviors of a developer type persona, what were the campaigns that were most effective? What were the assets that were most downloaded? This is where things start to get really interesting. Absolutely. I can't remember why I put that there. Probably something intelligent to try and wrap it up. I can't remember, sorry. Thank you very much. Any questions, anyone? Are we giving slide decks away? Yeah. I might need to still filter out some of those maturity model ones, the advanced ones, but for the most part, absolutely, yes.
LinkedIn group, so join us up on LinkedIn and we'll send out emails to follow up as well with all the materials that we've had today, including some of the recording stuff as well, so we're all on TV, so no swearing. Really interesting, thank you very much. Really valuable after a presentation like Ben's this morning, where it shows that there is a lot of preparation work to go in. Of course, there is with any big piece of technology, as Chris was saying. It's also to let you know, and I'll let Chris talk on a little bit longer there, that there are the tools in place and the services there to help you and your partners when you do embark on this DMS adventure.